What would you do if you were racing inside the top 5 of a NASCAR Cup Series race, and you were in enough pain that you needed a doctor and a medical injection the second the checkered flag dropped? Most people would pull over, call it a day, and let the medical team sort things out. Kyle Busch kept his foot down, held his position, and finished the job. That single fact tells you almost everything you need to know about the kind of competitor he is, but it does not tell you everything, and what is still unknown is exactly what has the NASCAR community buzzing right now. During the race at Watkins Glen International, a radio call went out from inside Kyle Busch's number 8 Chevrolet that stopped fans in their tracks the moment it hit the airwaves. His team had to scramble to locate a specific doctor. He named that doctor by name, mid-race, with the calmness of someone placing a lunch order. And to this day, Richard Childress Racing has not issued any official explanation of what actually happened inside that cockpit. The more you dig into the details, the bigger this story gets. Watkins Glen International is not a racetrack that forgives weakness. It is a full road course built with elevation changes, heavy braking zones, and long sweeping corners that punish your body from the first lap to the last. Unlike the oval tracks that form the backbone of the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, road courses demand that drivers use both sides of their body simultaneously, constantly rotating between left-hand and right-hand turns, braking hard, loading up the tires, and powering back out, lap after lap for the full duration of the race. The physical toll that Watkins Glen places on a driver's neck, shoulders, and core is significant even on a good day, with a rested body and full health. Kyle Busch was not having a good day in that sense. But on the track, you would not have known it. He was sitting inside the top 5 in his number 8 Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet, holding his own against the entire Cup Series field. For a driver who has been searching for consistent results throughout the 2026 Cup Series season, this was a meaningful run. His fans had been waiting for exactly this kind of performance. Everything on the timing screens looked like Kyle Busch was finally putting it all together, but something happening behind the scenes was telling a very different story. Before a single lap was turned at Watkins Glen, Kyle Busch was already fighting something off the track. Longtime NASCAR broadcaster Mike Joy mentioned during the FS1 broadcast that Kyle had been dealing with a sinus cold throughout the entire week leading up to the race. That detail matters more than it might seem at first glance. A sinus cold is not simply sniffles and a scratchy throat, not when you are inside a NASCAR race car. Inside that cockpit, drivers are dealing with intense heat, constant vibration, heavy G-forces through every corner, and a level of sustained concentration that leaves almost no room for physical discomfort. The sinuses are already under pressure just from the cockpit environment alone. Add a genuine sinus infection or cold on top of that, and every braking zone, every bump, and every high-speed corner becomes exponentially more difficult to manage. Kyle Busch knew all of this. He showed up anyway. He strapped in. He went racing. That alone is worth acknowledging before we even get to the radio call that changed the conversation entirely. The radio call itself is the centerpiece of this entire story, and it deserves to be walked through step by step, because the details are what make it so striking. Mid-race, Kyle Busch got on the radio with his Richard Childress Racing team. His voice was completely calm. There was no panic, no urgency in his tone, no indication at all that something significant was wrong, except for the specific words he chose to use. He asked his team if someone could track down a specific individual. He named Dr. William Heisel, describing him as the kindred doctor. He asked his team to let the doctor know he would need to see him after the race. His team, making sure they had the right information, asked where Kyle wanted to meet. Did he want the doctor at the car when he pulled in? Kyle's answer was direct and clear: he wanted the doctor at his team bus. And then he added one more word that immediately sent fans into a spiral. He said he was going to need a shot. That single word, shot, is what drove the conversation on social media for hours after the race. A shot in this context almost certainly refers to a pain relief injection of some kind. That is not something a driver needs for a minor ache or a headache. That is something a driver requests when they are managing real, significant pain, the kind of pain that cannot be pushed through on willpower alone and requires medical intervention. And yet, while all of this was being arranged over the team radio on live national television, Kyle Busch was still racing. Still holding position inside the top 5. Still making the right decisions lap after lap at one of the most physically punishing circuits on the Cup Series schedule. What this radio call reveals about Kyle Busch as a competitor goes well beyond the incident itself. The composure he displayed is not something every driver possesses. Most people, if they were in enough pain to require a medical injection immediately after finishing work, would let that show somehow, in their voice, in their body language, in the way they communicated with their team. Kyle did none of that. He handled his business on the track and kept his medical situation as quiet as he possibly could while still making sure his team knew what he needed waiting for him on the other side of the checkered flag. This is also not the first time Kyle Busch has raced through pain and discomfort. His career history includes numerous examples of competing through difficult physical situations. It is part of what defines him as a racer at the elite level. He has never been the driver who reaches for discomfort as an excuse for a poor result. But here is the important distinction with Watkins Glen: the fact that he specifically planned ahead, naming a doctor and requesting a shot before the race even ended, makes clear that this was not something minor. This was something he already knew he would need professional medical help for. That raises real questions about exactly what was happening inside that cockpit during the race. Returning to Watkins Glen as a venue is important here, because the track itself adds significant context to the story. Drivers at Watkins Glen are under constant physical stress from start to finish. The heat inside the cockpit at a summer road course event can be extreme. The lateral forces generated through the corners stress the neck, the shoulders, and the core in ways that oval racing simply does not replicate. Braking zones at Watkins Glen are among the most demanding in the sport, requiring drivers to scrub massive amounts of speed in a very short distance before immediately committing to a corner. For a driver managing a sinus cold that had been developing all week, and what sounds like a separate physical issue serious enough to require a post-race injection, completing a full race at Watkins Glen inside the top 5 is a genuinely impressive physical achievement. The track does not offer easy laps, and the conditions inside that car are unforgiving regardless of how good a driver feels walking into the weekend. The moment the radio audio began circulating after the race, the NASCAR community responded immediately and loudly. Clips of the exchange were being shared across Twitter and Facebook within minutes of hitting the airwaves. Fans were tagging each other, debating what the word shot actually meant in this context, and speculating about how serious the underlying situation was. The reaction broke into a few distinct camps. Some fans were genuinely worried, pointing out that hearing a driver request a medical injection mid-race is not something that happens often and that the word shot sounds alarming when you encounter it without prior context. Others felt somewhat reassured by Kyle's finishing position, the logic being that if he could race to a top 5 result while managing whatever was happening, perhaps it was not as severe as the radio call made it sound. A third group shifted the conversation forward, asking whether this situation could carry over into the following race weekend and whether it might be part of a larger ongoing physical issue that has not been discussed publicly. The common thread running through all of these reactions was simply not knowing. And that uncertainty is what kept the conversation alive long after the final lap at Watkins Glen was completed. The other major element of this story is what Richard Childress Racing has not done. The organization has not released any official statement about what happened with Kyle Busch at Watkins Glen. There has been no injury update, no medical clarification, and no word on whether Kyle is expected to be fully healthy heading into the next round of racing. Nothing has come from the team. On one level, that is entirely understandable. Medical situations are private. Kyle Busch is entitled to manage his health on his own terms, and teams are rarely in the business of rushing out statements about driver health unless there is a confirmed issue that directly impacts race availability. But on another level, the silence is doing nothing to slow the speculation. If anything, it is accelerating it. When a driver arranges for a specific doctor and a medical injection over live national television radio during a race, and the team says nothing publicly in the aftermath, people naturally fill in the blanks on their own. Until RCR decides to address it directly, the NASCAR community is working with incomplete information, and the story will continue to grow in the absence of facts. Looking ahead, the next race on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule becomes an immediate and important data point. If Kyle Busch arrives at the next venue looking sharp, qualifies well, and races the way he did at Watkins Glen, the reasonable conclusion is that whatever he was managing has been treated and addressed. But if he struggles, looks physically compromised, or if any information surfaces from inside RCR about his availability or physical condition, then this story becomes something significantly larger than a single radio call. There is also a broader question worth asking honestly. Kyle Busch's 2026 Cup Series season has been inconsistent by his own elite standards. The results have not matched the level of performance his career has established as the baseline expectation. Is there a physical component to that inconsistency, something that has been quietly affecting his results throughout the season without being discussed publicly? Nobody outside the RCR camp has a definitive answer to that right now. But the radio call at Watkins Glen has made that question impossible to ignore. Kyle Busch raced inside the top 5 at Watkins Glen International while managing a week-long sinus cold and a physical situation serious enough to require a planned medical injection the moment the race was over, and he did all of it without a single word of complaint until the job was nearly done. That is what 20-plus years of elite NASCAR racing at the highest level looks like in practice. If you found this story worth your time, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more NASCAR fans who want real, detailed coverage of everything happening in the sport. Subscribe so you never miss an update, because in NASCAR, there is always something breaking, and we will be here the moment it does. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Kyle's situation is more serious than it appears? Does Richard Childress Racing owe the fans a straight answer? And could this be part of a bigger story playing out across his entire 2026 season? The conversation starts right now.